So thanks for joining me for today's video when we continue our discussion on progress blockers for learning transfer. Remember, a progress blocker is something that comes up within the learning transfer conversation that can derail the process. And the blocker that we're going to be looking at today is an internal blocker, which means it's typically kind of within the mind, and it's the blocker of misperception. So to explain a little bit about misperception, we all build our world on certain filters, and these filters can be created through experiences we've had in the past, our parents, our upbringing, our background, but essentially we see the world through our own filters. So for example, if you have a salesperson who's had a really bad experience with a very pushy salesperson, they may decide that they don't want to be a very pushy salesperson. But what actually will end up happening is that they end up being quite a passive salesperson. So they're really clear that they want to build their sales on relationships and referral, which is all fantastic. But often their desire not to be pushy ends up with them being too passive. And that's the kind of misperception that we're thinking about. So they will probably feel that they're operating at the optimum, but on someone else's scale, they're being way below the optimum. Typically what's happened is by the end of the training program, the perception of the participant has been stretched. They'll have had some awareness created, they'll be feeling more confident, and they may well be in a stage where they actually commit to, yes, I need to ask for the sale more. So their perception has been stretched and they will commit the action to paper in that environment where they're feeling confident, anything's possible at the end of the training program. What happens when they get back to the real world? The hype of the training program has gone and they're back to the reality of what they do on a day-to-day basis, and probably that fear of being too pushy comes up again. And so when it comes down to discussing that particular action on their action plan, they'll say something like, yep, I've made some progress on that goal, but I don't want to be too pushy. So your intuition kicks in and you know there's an opportunity for something to be done a little bit differently here. You might explain what you've heard in terms of, John, so let me just play back to you what I'm seeing here. At the end of the training program, you committed to asking for the sale more, and now you're back in the workplace. You feel that you're asking for the sale a little bit more, but you don't want to be too pushy. Part of my role is to challenge you and stretch you, and you know, if you're absolutely at the right level of pushiness at the moment, then that's spot on. But I'd love us just to run a quick exercise on this to kind of stretch our thinking a little bit around it. Is that okay with you? Take the participant through an exercise, get them to picture in their mind, on a scale of 1 to 10, what they think the world's best practice is in terms of the right level of assertion during the sales process. So you might say that 10 is very pushy, 0 is being completely passive. What do they think is best practice? So most people would probably say maybe a 7 or an 8. So if we're talking to Dave, we'd then get Dave to put himself on that scale of 0 to 10. And Dave would be describing himself probably around a 7 or an 8, in that he's probably at about the optimum now. You then get Dave to picture in his mind who he considers to be a really pushy salesperson. And you might ask Dave where that person is on a scale of 1 to 10. Well, Dave is going to say that person is definitely a 10, if not an 11. You'd then get Dave to put himself in the position of the very pushy salesperson. For this exercise, we're going to call him John. So you're going to ask Dave where he thinks John would rate himself on a scale of 0 to 10. Well, even if John knows that he's a very pushy salesperson, he's never going to give himself a 10, so John would probably put himself on the scale at around an 8. You then get Dave, who is the salesperson, to imagine that he's asking John where John would rate Dave on the scale of 0 to 10. Well, John is going to probably rate Dave at about a 5, whereas Dave is rating himself at a 7. And these numbers are, different for different people, but what it actually highlights is that everyone has a skewed view of the world. You could even then throw in another level of questioning in terms of, and so where do you think your manager thinks you are on a scale of 0 to 10? And so you're getting them to compare their view, the manager's view, the extreme view, and what they will probably see is that there's a gap in their perception. And as the idea unfolds, what they'll become aware of is that for them to get to the norm, they will probably have to feel that they're being very pushy. So what to them feels like an 8 or a 9 will to other people probably look like a 7. So although this may sound like quite a complex process, what you will do through the conversation is start to raise awareness. And part of your role is to help that person have a realisation. And so one of the ways that you can actually help the person have the realisation for themselves, rather than actually telling them outright, is to kind of have the general discussion and then bring the realisation through by saying something like, so Dave, what are you thinking as we talk this through? So this is the stage then where you get them to commit to the action that they're going to take. What are they going to do by when? How are they going to measure their effectiveness? What support do they need? Who can they get help from? What do they need to be saying to themselves to help themselves follow through on that commitment? Once you've actually shifted their perception, the commitment is going to be much easier to frame up. So once you've got their commitment to taking action, you can check in on a scale of 0 to 10, and I often joke with my participants and clients that as a team we're absolutely obsessed with scale of 0 to 10s. So on a scale of 0 to 10, how confident are you that you'll be able to follow through on the actions that you've committed to today? 10 is completely confident, 0 is no confidence at all. Once we've actually got that discussion going and they've got a number in their mind, you then actually ask the question, so what would it take for that to become a 10 today, so that you can go away from here completely confident that you're able to follow through? It's just a way of calibrating in their mind level of confidence, and you can ascertain what else they can do to ensure the follow through. Hopefully you can see from this example how misperceptions can play out and how it can derail the learning transfer process. But with a few simple tools and techniques, how you can become highly skilled and ready to take on any derailer that the learning transfer process throws at you or your team. I really wish you well with your learning transfer conversations, and do remember to give us a call if we can help at all in any way.